Welcome in, everybody, to It's Official. The one thing we know is official. It's Preakness week, Jeff Siegel, middle jewel of the Triple Crown, Old Hilltop in Baltimore, part of the first family of racetracks. So hi-ho Pimlico this week, and it's going to be a big part of our 5 topics to talk about.
No question about it. It's the second jewel of racing's Triple Crown. Tremendous racing throughout the week, including the Black-Eyed Susan on Friday. But a little bit of controversy, or a lot of bit of controversy, between the Derby and the Preakness, with Rich Strike not participating. And that caught a lot of people by surprise. It was disappointing. The show will go on. It's still going to be a great race, but I sure would have liked to have seen Rich Strike back in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. That's the number one topic on our big board as we take 5 topics and a bonus on each week here on It's Official. It's missing in action, and you hinted at it, in Rich Strike. Almost immediately after the Derby, he got back. He was working at the training center outside Lexington for trainer Eric Reed, and then they pulled the plug, Jeff. Rather abruptly, I would say, last week. It was Thursday. Entry day wasn't until Monday. So the declaration of Rich Strike coming out of the Preakness Stakes didn't necessarily have to come last Thursday. They had a few more days to see if he was going to bounce back. So it seems more to plan or more in reaction to something. We'll never know the real reason.
Yeah, I wish we did, because I'm thinking that there are very few owners out there, maybe one, that would do this. I mean, you've got a horse on a possibility of winning a Triple Crown. Not that he necessarily would have to win it, and he probably would have been 4th choice in the Preakness if he'd come back. But this is the kind of decision you make you make Monday or Tuesday, Monday anyway, and when the entries come out, to make sure that you're making the right decision. I didn't see any advantage in saying we're not gonna run last Thursday,
right?
So I don't quite get it. I'm not really sure that we've been told the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I just don't know. I don't know if it's physical. I don't know whether there are other factors at play, exterior factors. This just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Look, not so early. That's all.
Yeah. As a Cub sports writer, I used to tag along with an elder sports writer and learn the ropes from him. And one thing he told me in my writing at the beginning is never tell somebody how to spend their money. As a sports writer, it's very tempting, right? This team should do that. That they should be making these moves, that move. Never tell somebody how to spend their money. So it's Rick Dawson's horse. It's Eric Reed, the trainer's horse. They're making the decision that they think is right for them. Perhaps just to win the Belmont Stakes, they feel they have a better chance there. History says otherwise, that the race at Pimlico is very kind to Kentucky Derby winners, very kind to horses coming back from a good performance in the Kentucky Derby, and very formful, right? Almost 50% favorites have won the Preakness all time, and an 80-1 shot won the Kentucky Derby. Jeff, only 2 horses in history have won the Preakness at 20-1 or more. 20, not 80, 20. So it's a very formful race. And if you have a horse who's, rolling 7s, you pull him off the craps table, it doesn't get better in 5 weeks necessarily. I mean, it's more time. And time is what everybody talks about now that horses need in between races. But in the history between the Derby and the Preakness, those Derby winners come back. I mean, you look at My Net Bird. He was an impossibility, and he took Rachel Alexander to the absolute wire in the Preakness Stakes back in 2009. Giacomo ran a very good 3rd, and Giacomo and My Net Bird also came back and ran well in the Belmont, but their performances decreased as they ran the 3 times in the series. Maybe they're just hoping 2 is better than 1, but boy, I make this statement a lot in Countdown to the Crown and in our shows here. You're only 3 one day in your entire life. It's the first Saturday in May that you could win a Kentucky Derby. There's only 1 Triple Crown, and only 1 horse out of that group has a chance to go for it. So, again, I'm not going to tell somebody how to spend their money, but I do question the decision. If it was my horse, I'm running in the Preakness Stakes, but what do I know?
I have a little bit of experience with this, because back in 1982, Gato del Sol won the Derby for Eddie Gregson. I was very close to the barn at the time. I had horses with Eddie. In fact, I almost bought Gato del Sol as a 2-year-old, and that's a
you should have
different time. A tragic story. I won't get into it now, but I followed that colt very well, and I remember Eddie's decision at the time had nothing to do with anything other than Eddie did not think he could win the Preakness, because at the time, if you remember, the Pimlico racetrack was very pro speed, very pro inside. Yes. He said, I'm not going to put this horse in a bad position. I don't necessarily think that this is good for the horse. It's coming back 2 weeks, but that's not the reason. I just don't think he could win it. Now, maybe he
Right.
could have, maybe he couldn't have. He waited for the Belmont and caught Conquistador Cielo. Perhaps it would have been wiser to go to the Preakness rather than do that.
Yeah.
But and then, of course, in '85, Spendebuck dodged the Preakness because they was going for a $2 million bonus at
Right.
Garden State Park in the Jersey Derby, which, by the way, $2 million in the mid '80s, a lot of money.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Ain't bad now either.
Yeah, exactly. But this comes out of nowhere. So you're right. It's their horse. They do what they want. Maybe they really feel that the horse would not come back as well in 2 weeks. I'm disappointed, but hey, I'm a racing fan, so I have a right to be disappointed. That's all
Right.
I
And if you own the horse, you have the right to do with what you want with the horse. And if
Exactly.
you're a fan, you have the right to be happy or sad about it. So,
That's exactly
if you follow people on Twitter, like if you were upset that the horse isn't in the Preakness, it's like you're rooting for Russia over Ukraine or something. I mean, it's like, like you're the worst person in the world for thinking a horse coming back on 2 weeks' notice is putting them out. But as we go to topic number 2 in this week's it's official. We know horses are coming back on 2 weeks. In fact, 2 very good ones. One's coming back on 14 days, another on 15 days, Jeff. And the Preakness storylines start with the filly, Secret Oath, coming 15 days back from the Kentucky Oaks, and the beaten Derby favorite, Epicenter, who's the 6-5 morning line favorite of morning line maker Keith Fustel at Pimlico. Epicenter, Secret Oath. We know it's a race deeper than that, but when you talk storylines here, it's the filly against the Derby runner-up.
No question about it. And I haven't heard anything from Steve Asmussen about Epicenter or Wayne Lucas regarding a Secret Oath. Any concerns at all about coming back in 2 weeks?
Right.
I mean, it's not like this is just being thrown at them. They know going in what it's going to be like. It's the same spacing we've had between these 2 races, and I don't know how many years, but almost 100. I mean, not quite that much. But bottom line is, Steve knows his horse. He felt that Epicenter would bounce back in a good way. I'm sure that he will, and Wayne's filly can do it as well. So I think that this idea is, it's too quick. It's you're gonna bounce, you're gonna react, all this other garbage. I don't want to hear it, because good horses can handle it, and no question that Epicenter is a good horse. Absolutely, Secret Oath is a good filly, and unlike early voting, who actually passed the Derby primarily because for other reasons, by the way, it's a good thing he did, because I don't, God knows what would have happened to him on that pace stool. But I mean, horses can do it. They do it all the time, and I think this is maybe an overreaction to some handicappers who feel that horses are it's back too quick. I've never bought it. I'm still not buying it. I think both those horses, Epicenter and Secret Oath, are going to run huge.
Let's talk Secret Oath. Let's talk about the filly. She has the 1 loss this year. Otherwise, she's run the table at Oaklawn, winning the Honey Bee and trying the Arkansas Derby, where Luis Contreras simply mistimed the ride. There's no question in my mind. Luis Saez got it right on Kentucky Oaks Day, Jeff, and punched by everybody in what was expected to be a very contentious Oaks field. She beat a good group in there. So if you're going to try the boys with the filly, coming out of a very good crop of 3-4 regional stars in the 3-year-old filly division, this seems like the kind of filly to do it with, and the kind of year to do it with, because the fillies look so strong.
They do, and this is a filly that, if you remember her win in the Honeybee, she looked every bit like the Arkansas Derby winner that day. Obviously, got a misjudged ride in the Arkansas Derby, and then came back and won the Oaks. I'm not really sure whether she's up to beating the best in here, early voting and Epicenter and that group. She should hit the board, I would think. And she makes for a good storyline, not only with her and the filly touts and the boys, which, by the way, in the Preakness is it's not that difficult. We found out in the last few years that it can happen. But I'm glad she's in there, because it gives a little spice to a race that we like. The race, part of our under our umbrella, and want to see it interesting. And I definitely think that Secret Oath makes it just that. I think it's a really, really good race. Would have been an incredible race with the Derby winner in it, but it's still a very good race without him.
Swiss Skydiver won the Preakness a couple years ago when it was in the fall. That was the October Preakness, so a little bit different. Rachel Alexandra, the only Kentucky Oaks winner ever to win the Preakness. And before Rachel Alexandra, you got to go back to 1924 since we had a Preakness winning filly. So there's some gap there. But she seems to fit with this group. She certainly fits with everybody beyond the top one or two. And I would have to think that she's going to hit the board with her running style and the form that she's in. As for Epicenter, Steve Asmussen will bring this one back over on the 2 weeks off of a really strong effort. That was not quite Bodemeister-esque in defeat in the Kentucky Derby, but very close. This is a horse who was, a part of the mix once he was thrown up into the phalanx about 5 furlongs from the wire. And he ran 5 hard furlongs in the Kentucky Derby, Jeff, only to be caught by that 80-1 shot. So is this the kind of race where Epicenter is just so much better than everybody and fit, or is this a potential bounce? How do you see it?
That's the only concern you have. Now, as a gambler, if you're taking 6-5 on a horse like this, and you may even go lower, I don't know, you don't want to have to worry about that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was back in 2 weeks off a hard, taxing, grueling, gut-wrenching race. It could have an effect. I don't think Steve Asmussen's worried about it. But if you're gambling on the race, in the back of your mind, at 6-5, you don't need to worry about that. You don't want to have to worry about that. 4-5-1, you don't care. You're gambling. But if they got a short price, you want all the bases covered. And I'm not sure what early voting is going to do. And I haven't seen him in the flesh, obviously, since the Derby. I don't know what he's looking like. I haven't really seen him train. So I'm just going to have to assume that he's going to run his race, but at a short price. So again, as a gambler, maybe I look a little bit elsewhere. Maybe I look at early voting. Maybe I look at somebody else. But I will be very, very surprised if Epicenter doesn't run at least a credible race, maybe even as good as he ran in Kentucky.
Yeah, I think he's going to run his race. I don't think there's going to be a big bounce involved. We'll see what the pace is like, and we'll just see if somebody else doesn't bring a more brilliant effort. But I think it's going to take a really strong effort to beat him. I think he's a pretty consistent horse. He's Midnight Bourbon 2.0 from last year, but more talented, just a little bit more talented. And we just see how steady and true Midnight Bourbon is and tactical in his running style, that he's in every race. This horse is also like that, but just a little bit better, and maybe gets over the hump in the Triple Crown races for the wind chills. Let's go to our third topic this week, and it's official. We're voting early, Jeff. In fact, it was election day here as we tape in Pennsylvania. So I voted early today, and we're going to talk early voting for the Preakness. Let's go back and take a look at his Wood Memorial victory, our runner-up finish. First off,
it is early voting, trying to take them wire to wire here. Early voting in front. Mo Donegal comes on through down on the inside to grab second. It is early voting in front. A challenge here from Mo Donegal. Early voting trying to hold on with a 16th to the finish. Mo Donegal bearing down on the outside. It's Mo Donegal and early voting, and it is Mo Donegal.
So early voting tried to take him all the way with stiff fractions at the Wood Memorial at 1 1/8 miles. That was the big test for him. He had won the Withers against lesser competition. Jeff, what we saw Mo Donegal able to track him down, it took 35-30, the last 3 furlongs for that to happen, which was an exceptional, as fast as I've seen a final 3 furlongs in a major Derby prep in the 17 years I've done Countdown to the Crown. I can't remember a faster finish. Mo Donegal came back and ran the second fastest final quarter in the Kentucky Derby to finish 5th. But he was wide. Rich Strike went inside. I think the race by Mo Donegal, not only there in the Wood, but the way he ran in the Kentucky Derby kind of underscores early voting in here. I thought that was a really good effort last out in the Wood.
It was, and what the tape doesn't show is that early voting actually galloped out with Mo Donegal. It wasn't like Mo Donegal flying past him and opening, galloping out 10 in front. That wasn't it. Leading me to believe that early voting might have been caught a little bit by surprise. Maybe he was waiting on him a little bit, but bottom line, it was a very good race for him. And and he's fresh. We know that. And that's an early voting, who's run and improved his buyer number by leaps and bounds in the 3 starts that he's had. And being by gun runner, who knows what his ceiling is going to be. I think early voting has a really good chance to pull off an upset here. Not that much of an upset, 7-2 in the morning line. The only horse in this race that I think has a chance to pressure him early if they send him hard is Armagnac, the California colt who won both of his starts at gate to wire. But I've watched him out here in California from 0 to 60 from the start to the gate. He's not that quick. And I think if early voting gets the jump on him leaving the barrier, he'll establish the pace along the rail. And then he might not get that much pressure. And if that happens, I really think early voting is a very, very good colt who is going to get nothing but better. I saw a little bit of, I don't know, it was camera phone video of him breezing through that race. He looked fine from what I could figure it out. And Chad Brown, he's not just a turf horse trainer. He can train on the dirt as well. I think the gamble for me anyway, with all due respect to the logical top pick, Epicenter, I think I'm going to be looking at early voting perhaps as being my key in this race.
And you talked about Armagnac as the horse who possibly could put some pressure on. Skippy Longstocking from the outside, maybe for Safi Joseph gets sent. But if it's not one of those two, then the job of doing the dirty work falls on Epicenter. And that's always a tough position to be in. Joel Rosario on Epicenter is going to be like, do I apply now? Do I wait a little bit? He knows he has a patient horse who in the Louisiana Derby was able to sit and pounce. That's the kind of trip that he's looking at again. But is early voting a better front runner than what he faced in the Louisiana Derby? And will he be able to repel the challenge? To me, that's the race. I think they turn for home, and it's early voting on top. It's Epicenter trying to stalk him, and the fillies coming from the back. Unless those two get after each other to the point where the filly can roll by everybody, it seems to be a showdown kind of race where early voting leads to the 3/16 to the eighth pole, and Epicenter tries to go by him. To me, that's the horse race. And like you said, it's a gamble, right? 6-5 on one, 7-2 on the other on Keith Fusel's morning line. I'm not so sure those odds are far off. I think that's about where they're going to fall. I don't know if the filly's going to get a lot of sentimental money. You know, she's 9-2 in the morning line. Could she go a little bit lower? If she does, I think the benefactor of people backing early voting, because he would seem to drift up a little bit. Maybe you could get a half point more and get up to 4-1 on him. But I think he's going to be well backed in there. He's the cloud computing clone, if you will, from 2017, right? Seth Klarman from Baltimore skipped the Kentucky Derby with cloud computing for Chad Brown. Same number of starts coming out of the Wood Memorial. They just have different running styles. Cloud computing came from just off the pace to win the Preakness. Early voting is going to be in front. But I'm with you on this one, partner. I mean, we don't always pick the same horses, but I think the gamble in this race is early voting wire to wire. You take away the variables, you go to the front, and if he's good enough, and if Epicenter doesn't run an A-plus race, maybe you wire him at a $10 mutual. That's the way I'm looking at it as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the tiebreaker was Gunrunner. He's my new Curlin, by the way. I mean, if I see Gunrunner in a pedigree, and this is just his first crop, he is spectacular. And I was waiting actually for a son of Candy Ride to emerge and be the heir apparent to Candy Ride, and Gunrunner is it. And I don't think we've seen the best of early voting for sure.
I'll give you this little tip as a gambler, though. If you're betting Pimlico in general, your boy Curlin is outstanding. He gets like 25, 26% winners on the main track at Pimlico. So in your handicapping this weekend, if you don't play Pimlico typically, you're watching the cards Thursday, Friday, Saturday this weekend, look for Offspring of Curlin. They run exceptionally well over the main track historically at Pimlico. So we'll give you that handicapping tip as we go back. You got something there, Jeff?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if I know that, I'm going to change my pick to Fenwick. So
he's good, but he's not that good to get Fenwick into the winner's circle.
It's part of the rules. You got to play a Curlin. So I'm going to play Fenwick now on top at 250-1.
All right. Good luck cashing. Good luck cashing that one. The windows are open if you want to get down.
I'll blame you if he loses. Okay.
Fourth topic on It's Official this week as we pivot from the Preakness to a look ahead perhaps to the Belmont. Did we see a preamble of the Belmont Stakes last week in the Peter Pan?
It is We the People, the one to catch into the stretch. We the People has opened up here. We the People pouring it on. We the People has built a 7-length lead. It is We the People in a terrific performance in the Grade 3 Peter Pan. We the People, wire to wire.
So, Jeff, it was a wire-to-wire win off a 7th place dull effort in the Arkansas Derby for We the People. What changed? I mean, it's Big Sandy. It was a different kind of racing surface. It was sloppy for the Peter Pan. Was he just off his game in the Arkansas Derby? There's just that one blemish on an otherwise spectacular 4-start career so far for We the People.
Can you imagine if he didn't run in the Arkansas Derby and he was 3 for 3 with that record going into what certainly will be the Belmont Stakes, I would imagine. Well, you've seen this a million times, Jeremy, and so have I. A horse gets loose from the lead on a wet track and looks like King Kong out there. And this is what happened here. And I learned a long time ago. I'm going to take you back to 1968 when I went to Santa Anita Racetrack and was learning how to handicap. Although at the time I thought I knew everything, but I really didn't. And I remember watching a first-time starter that you'd have to be my age to remember, but there was a horse named Here Comes Trouble, and he won his first start there over a muddy, wet track, and he won by 15 or 18 lengths. And he ran 110 and change. Everybody else was running in 114. They didn't have any published speed figures at the time.
Right.
So the only thing I knew about was what I read in Ray Talbot's book with his pace calculator. And I kind of figured whatever number or whatever speed figure he would have gotten would have been like Man-O-War.
Right.
Well, it turns out that this is a horse, and maybe you remember this at the old time. This horse had a mud mark in the racing form. It was an X with a circle.
Yeah, that's the big one. Yeah,
he was the biggest mud freak I ever saw in my life. But we didn't know that after his first start. Well, it turns out he was, but on fast ground he was worth about 32. Or 25,000. So off tracks can make any horse look way better than they are. Yeah. And I'm not sure We the People is as good as that 103 buyer, a 10-length romp on the Peter Pan makes them look, because number one, he got loose in the lead, and we always know that you get loose in the lead, you can outrun yourself most of the time. And caught a wet track that he obviously liked. Now, maybe he'll catch the same thing at Belmont. I don't know. But I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I cannot take this race at face value. I got to see more. I've been fooled way too many times.
Yeah, and the Peter Pan is one of those races. It's kind of like a false flag, if you will. It's a mile and an eighth around one turn. Now they're going to go a mile and a half around two turns at the Belmont Stakes. There's a reason since AP India in 1992 that one horse who's won the Peter Pan, that being Tonalist in 2014, has gone on to win the Belmont Stakes. They're apples and oranges in races. So while we can look back at the performance and question whether or not it was mud aided or slop aided for We the People, as it translates to a Belmont Stakes performance, it's probably best to eliminate to consider going the mile and a quarter. But it is interesting, like you say, had they skipped the Arkansas Derby with this horse, and he had that 3 for 3 by 5 3/4, and now 10 1/4 lengths, his 3 win margins, he might be favored in the dang Belmont Stakes, depending on, Rich Strike's not going to be the favorite, right? Depending on what happens with Epicenter in the Preakness or somebody in the Preakness, he'd be the favorite for the Belmont Stakes if he had a 3 for 3 record. So it just goes to show how much like one performance, good or bad, can really sway public opinion on a horse. So, I mean, if you like him and you think, God, he'd have been favored if he didn't run bad in the Arkansas Derby, then get you some in the Belmont Stakes. But I'm going to try to pass on him, I'm sure, by the time we get to that point. But We the People, hey, Arkansas Derby, the also-rans in there have now won the Kentucky Oaks and gone on to win the Peter Pan Stakes. So some pretty good consolation prizes for what looked to be a down Arkansas Derby this year, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see how he performs. But like you say, I'll probably be looking elsewhere unless it's a Belmont Stakes with one speed horse, him, and 8 closers. Then you might project a loose on the lead Conquistador Cielo type of race, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
You mentioned Conquistador Cielo twice in this podcast, and for people who aren't of our age or have followed racing as close as we have over the years, we have to remind people the most incredible performance in a week of horse racing ever. In 1982, Conquistador Cielo won the Met Mile on Memorial Day Monday.
Right. That's true.
And then came back later that week, 5 days later, to win a mile and a half Belmont Stakes against his own 3-year-old crop. The most incredible 5-day stretch probably any horse in my lifetime has had. And just one of the most phenomenal, like, you're never going to see that again. As these guys struggle with what to do with 5 weeks between a race. 5 days for Woody Stephens. And, of course, that was part of Woody's incredible run. 6 Belmonts that he won during that run, where he just absolutely owned the race at that time. A couple records that will probably never be beaten. Woody Stephens' streak in the Belmont Stakes of winning the race, and that 5-day, 2 grade 1s, Met Mile Belmont Stakes. I don't think we're going to see another horse in the modern game win 2 races of that repute in a 5-day span. But these are the kind of things we talk about now, because 1982 was a long time ago. Don't get me wrong. We're talking
about 40 years ago. And
40
by the way,
years. Yeah. But when you were watching racing in 1982 compared to watching racing right now, it's not like you're talking horse and buggy, right? I mean, things principally weren't that different back then. So a lot has changed with how horses are campaigned, and maybe it's the breeding and the the things we can't see and touch and tangibly assess, where people say horses just aren't bred like they used to be. But we're not talking about like 1930, or they're starting a race with the tape measure and the jocks weigh 136 pounds and whatever. I mean, racing in 1982 to today, if it was broadcast in HD, wouldn't look that much different.
It would look the same. I'm telling you. And by the way, in that Conquistador Cielo win 40 years ago, on and off track, he came back and got beat in his next start. So, I mean, the race might have flattered him in terms of his ability to get a distance to ground. That was Gato del Sol's year, of course, who passed the Preakness and ran into that horse. And also Lafitte Pincay was on the horse because Eddie Maple had gotten hurt the day before. Pincay got on the horse, and I'll never forget this. After the race is over, they're galloping out, and it might have been Charles C. Canny, who picked up the microphone on the horseback and said, "What do you think, Lafitte?" And he said, pulling up after in the backstretch after he says, "I've never been on a horse like this." So anyway, good story. I don't know if we'll ever see one like him again, and I'm pretty sure we'll never see a horse enter the Belmont off a 5-day turnaround. But hey, it was a little different back then.
A little bit different. Let's go to our fifth and final main topic this week on It's Official. We talked about the difference between 82 and now. Well, there's not a lot of difference in the filly and mare turf division. Chad Brown owns it, and he got another one last week with
Off
Rougier.
the turn and into the stretch. It's High Opinion, Our Flash Drive. Plum Alley continues to battle on. Rougier is out in the middle of the course and coming on now. Here comes Rougier up to challenge Our Flash Drive. Here is Rougier now to take over the lead. It is Rougier, and she will deliver here, coming from off the pace under Flavien Prat.
Well, Jeff, the rich get richer. This is the horse who came over for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf last year, formerly with Cedric Rossi over in France. Now a Group 1 winner in Chad Brown's care, winning in Group 3 company here last week, but has to be headed to the highest levels next.
They gave $3.4 million for back in December of this year, and she is just a 4-year-old. She was a top, very high-class filly over in France. She won on Arc Day, a Group 1 there. Didn't get the best of runs in the Breeders' Cup Turf, but I think she's going to be among the very premier older grass mares for Chad Brown, and he has so many of them. I mean, I'm looking down the list here: Virginia Joy and Bleeckert Street and Regal Glory and this filly and Speak of the Devil, who we saw on Derby Day. I mean, there's just no one. These are just horses that are off the top of my head. There got to be more that are coming. But the way Rougier won this race, and how often do you see this? A mile and 1/16, 3/4, a half and 50, 3/4 and 13. They come home in 29 flat. She's dead last at the top of the stretch. How fast is she motoring by? And she goes by and just wins in hand. So based on what I just saw, Rougier might very well be the best of the best. And there's about 4 others in that same barn that are going to win stakes as well. So a very exciting performance for Chad Brown, who is now getting better grade fillies. He's not getting Group 3s and making them the Group 1s. He's getting the Group 1s now right off the bat. That's scary, and that's one of the reasons I think why Flavien Prat went back there, because he knows he's gets the first pick of the litter too.
4-time Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf winner Chad Brown, and he's got a loaded hand this year. He had like a little bit of a dip, right? He's only won the Filly Mare Turf once in the last 6 years, but Sister Charlie in there. But this year he's won the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf, the inaugural edition of that race. He won the Jenny Wiley, Keeneland's best race for the Filly and Mare Turf division. He won the Distaff Turf Mile at Churchill on Derby weekend, like you said, the big race at Churchill. And now he's got the Bouguet winner here, who may be the best of them all. And she's going to be running in those big NYRA races. It'll be Chad separating from Chad, and our handicapping chore will be deciding between 3 or 4 Chads in these big grade 1s coming up this summer. He's loaded again in the Filly and Mare Turf division. And if Jeff and I are right, he's going to celebrate a Preakness win on Saturday, potentially as well.
I think you're right about that.
With early voting. It's good to be Chad Brown, except on Twitter. I don't know if you saw the exchange, but Don Chatlos, the trainer of Singletary, and Chad Brown got into a little kerfuffle on Twitter with each other about Chad saying, why don't you just give the trainer credit? Don was crediting Flavien Prat for the ride, and Chad was a little upset that he didn't get the training credit. $227 million in lifetime earnings for Chad Brown's horses. and it still doesn't exonerate you from getting your feathers ruffled on Twitter, Jeff.
Yeah,
227 million. Just
Chad,
take the money, count the money, and let people talk on Twitter.
Yeah, Chad, don't worry about it. just order the winner's circle pictures and find room for them on the wall. That's all that matters.
We've got one more to talk about on a bonus topic that Jeff wanted to reach in, because if you tried to bet Modern Games last year in the Breeders' Cup, things kind of turned out a little sideways. Modern Games was back in action this weekend and last weekend. Let's take a look at his stretch run from over in Europe.
Well in the silver jacket to the right, making progress. Texas in the orange is battling on strongly, but Modern Games has got him at the moment. Tribalist is still there. Well making move is Lasso running on now. Modern Games is asserting as he runs to the line. William Buick and Modern Games have won it by over length. Texas in second place. Third will be close. Tribalist was being joined by Ancient Rome. Lasso well, the next pair of making move is behind those.
So he ran for purse money and pari-mutuel money in this one, Jeff, back in a nice way for Modern Games.
And he went off at 2-1. This was the 2000 Guineas in France. It was his first start since finishing first in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last November. You couldn't get anything in that race. You got 2-1 if you were paying attention at Longchamp. He was the favorite, but an outstanding performance for Modern Games, who will be seen next, according to trainer Charlie Appleby, in the St. James's Palace at Royal Ascot. This was not the only Guineas win for the Godolphin. They also won with another colt in England, Caribus, who was a superior colt, maybe even better than Modern Games. Caribus, we'll see where he goes next. But I just think that Modern Games, Caribus, these are colts that we are going to see more of perhaps in the fall. And I don't know why all of a sudden Godolphin has gotten almost unbeatable, but they are. In fact, in the English Guineas, they ran 1-2 in that race. So it's not like their second and third stringers are better than our first stringers. So, but it was good to see Modern Games come back. I remember handicapping that race, not that it did me any good, in singling him and betting on him in the race. And I looked at his form prior to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and they've won. The Euros have won a lot of these. This horse was far superior to anything they had brought over in the previous few years, and he went about his business and won, and picks it up where he left off. So Modern Games, one to follow if you like the European racing. If you like Godolphin, lots of winners coming up for that stable in the next month or so.
And in that international battle between Coolmore, Aidan O'Brien's camp, and Godolphin and Appleby and formerly Saeed Bin Sur with so many of their good horses, there's been a great rivalry over the past couple decades. But right now in the arm wrestling match, Godolphin's pinning down Coolmore with many of these big performances, including what we saw here at Kentucky Derby weekend. Santon winning the race on turf, the Turf Classic at Churchill, becoming one of the top American-based turf runners in the older division. So Godolphin's Big Blues got it going on. And I didn't even know that. I didn't talk with Godolphin before dressing for today's show, Jeff, but I ended up wearing the Big Blue for you for the
that's right.
For the finale.
You got the Big Blue, and that's good for you. Modern Games, by the way, runs next in the French Derby, so those races are always fun to watch. Hopefully he'll have better luck than your beard did in the Man Award, but they can't win them. They can't win them all. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of a disappointment just to make the wins look that much more fun, because otherwise it'll get just too boring to keep winning all these
Save some scraps for the rest of us, would you?
Exactly.
Let's review the big board. Our 5 topics this week. Missing in action. We're sorry that we don't get to see Rich Strike, but we understand the connections, and it's their horse. Do what you wish, and we look forward to seeing Rich Strike in the Belmont Stakes. But our Preakness storylines, of course, featuring the filly and Secret Oath taking on the Kentucky Derby runner-up Epicenter in the big matchup. Jeff and I both went to the ballot box for early voting, and be sure to download the First and Express Bet Preakness Wager Guide, which will be available on Wednesday. Go to first.com/guide, 1st.com/guide, and you can get that wager guide. Or I can tell you right now, Bulldog Edition, Jeff and I are both on early voting. We looked at the preamble to the Belmont Stakes, where we saw the Peter Pan winner, We the People, run off in the slop, and more green for Chad Brown with another Rougier Big performance on the turf. So, Jeff, that's going to wrap up this edition of It's Official. Give us a final send-off into the Preakness Stakes.
Well, I'll be actually doing some Preakness work and Preakness card work with my analysis and wagering strategies, some best plays. You can find that at expressbet.com, and we'll have that up Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And looking forward to a great day. I haven't checked the weather in the last few days. I did check it about a week ago. It looks like it should be okay.
Hot.
Well, I can live with hot.
Sunny and 94 in Baltimore for Preakness.
Really?
Day.
Well, they don't run the Preakness till around 7 o'clock. Maybe it'll cool off by then. But I'm looking forward to great racing at Pimlico. The undercard is always interesting, always challenging. So we'll be doing that. And let's hope for a safe and fair race. And then we'll let things shake out 3 weeks later in New York.
All right, our 5 topics this week are now declared official because Jeff Siegel said so, and we will be back to make the Preakness official and talk about it next Tuesday on It's Official. Good luck in the middle leg, and hi-ho Pimlico. Great call. Good luck to our buddy Dave Rodman calling this year's Preakness Stakes, as he always does with such aplomb. It's Official is now official. We'll see you next week.